My focus wasn't destroyed by the world. It was dissolved by the small distractions I accepted every day. And only when I learned Taka Fujita's philosophy did I realize that focus isn't strength, it's purity. Fujita said that the human mind is like a wet paintbrush. Any wrong touch spreads everything. And for years, I let anything touch me. But today, I'm going to show you how I regained my focus and how you can do the same. Stay with me until the end. A single change can redefine your mental clarity forever. The focus I thought I had, and the chaos I was actually living in. I thought I was a focused person, until I realized my day was a collection of interruptions. I prided myself on my ability to multitask, to respond quickly to everything, to always be available, to keep several balls in the air simultaneously. I looked at my packed schedule, my inbox with hundreds of emails, my multiple open browser tabs, my simultaneous projects, and saw all of this as evidence of competence, relevance, and productivity. I told myself and others that I was focused, disciplined, capable of managing complexity. But when I finally stopped to honestly observe how my days really unfolded, the truth was devastating. There was no focus at all. There was only constant fragmentation, attention shattered in 1,000 directions, energy dispersed so finely that nothing received my full presence. I wasn't multitasking well. I was multitasking mediocrely, each receiving only fractions of my true capacity. Each day was structured, or rather, unstructured, around interruptions accepted as normal, even inevitable. I would start a task, and 3 minutes later, a notification would pull me in another direction. I would try to write something important, and my cell phone would vibrate with a message I needed to check immediately. I would be in deep conversation with someone, and my mind would already be jumping to the next appointment. I would sit down to work on a significant project, and within minutes I would be checking email, then social media, then the news, then returning to work for brief moments before the next interruption. And the worst part is that most of these interruptions weren't externally imposed. They were self-inflicted, the result of my own decisions about where to allow my attention to be hijacked. I had built an entire life around the premise that constant interruption was productivity, that being always available for everything was a virtue, that fragmenting attention among dozens of things was a desirable skill. I was built by the distractions I allowed. This truth hit me like a hammer when I finally confronted it. I wasn't an innocent victim of the distracting modern world. I was an active architect of my own fragmentation. Every time I chose to check my phone in the middle of important work, I was building a neural pathway of distraction. Every time I allowed email to interrupt deep thought, I was reinforcing a pattern of shallow attention. Every time I tried to do 3 things simultaneously instead of one with full presence, I was sculpting a brain less and less capable of sustained focus. The distractions I allowed weren't just wasting my time. They were literally rebuilding my neural architecture, making me a different person, a person with an increasingly fragmented attention span, a person less and less capable of the deep work that requires hours of uninterrupted concentration. And this distanced me from who I could be in ways I was barely beginning to understand. All the ambitious projects I dreamed of undertaking but never completed. It wasn't a lack of time. It was a lack of sustained focus necessary for truly meaningful work. All the deep skills I wanted to develop but remained eternally at an intermediate level. It wasn't a lack of potential. It was a refusal to give the focused and prolonged attention necessary for mastery. All the relationships that remained superficial despite wanting deep connection. It wasn't a lack of opportunity. It was an inability to be truly present without half my attention always leaking somewhere else. My fragmentation had an enormous cost that I had been denying. It was keeping me trapped in a much smaller version of myself than I was capable of being. A version that did many things, but nothing exceptionally. A version that was always busy, but rarely productive in ways that mattered. a version that existed on the surface of everything, but never delved deep into anything. The awakening came at a specific moment I'll never forget. I was working on a project that was theoretically a priority, but in a 2-hour period, I checked email 23 times, social media 15 times, news 8 times, and instant messages constantly. At the end of those 2 hours, the real progress I made on the project was equivalent to perhaps 15 minutes of focused work. I had wasted 105 minutes in self-destructive fragmentation, convincing myself all the while that I was being productive. And the quality of those 15 minutes of real work was mediocre because my brain was constantly being pulled in other directions, never allowed to enter a state of deep focus where truly excellent work happens. I looked at those 2 wasted hours and multiplied them by how many hours a day, days a week, weeks a year I had lived that way. Entire years of wasted potential in fragmentation that I had chosen, normalized, even celebrated as multitasking. And in that moment of brutal clarity, I knew something had to radically change. I couldn't continue building my life on a foundation of fragmented attention and call that focus. I needed to learn what true focus really was. And that's when I encountered Taka Fujita's teachings. Taka Fujita and the principle of the directed mind. Fujita said that true focus is born when you remove everything that doesn't belong on your path. Taka Fujita was a Japanese master craftsman who spent 60 years creating ceramics of such pure beauty that museums around the world collected his work. But what fascinated me about him wasn't just his creations, it was his philosophy on attention, on focus, on how the mind should be directed. He didn't talk about adding productivity techniques or focus hacks to your life. He talked about relentless removal, about systematically eliminating everything that didn't serve the essential work. He had a simple but radical principle. Your mind can only follow a true path when you remove all false paths. This meant that focus didn't come from Herculean willpower to maintain attention despite 1,000 distractions. It came from creating an internal and external environment where distractions simply didn't exist, where there was only one possible direction for attention to follow, because all others had been systematically eliminated. When I discovered Fujita's writings and interviews, one of his phrases haunted me for weeks. Westerners try to build focus by adding discipline. Japanese. People build focus by subtracting temptation. The distinction was profound and completely contrary to everything I had learned about productivity. I had always approached focus as something I built through effort. Stronger willpower, stricter self-discipline, more complex time management systems. But Fujita proposed something radically different. Focus wasn't built, it was revealed. It was already there, beneath all the layers of distraction I had allowed to accumulate. Like a sculptor who doesn't create form, but only removes unnecessary marble to reveal form that was always hidden within the stone. My job wasn't to add more strength or discipline. It was to systematically subtract everything that was preventing my natural focus from emerging. When I started subtracting, instead of adding, silence became strength. This paradigm shift completely transformed my approach. I stopped asking, how can I force myself to focus better? And started asking, what can I remove that is fragmenting my attention? I started small but radically. I deleted all social media from my phone. Not just limited usage or set timers, I removed them completely. I disabled all notifications except for specific people who really mattered. I closed all browser tabs except the one relevant to my current work. I removed the visible clock from my workspace because I was constantly checking the time. I canceled newsletter subscriptions that I never read, but that created mental noise of things I should be reading. Each removal was an act of liberation. Each subtraction created more space for genuine focus to emerge. And something unexpected happened. The silence that resulted from these removals wasn't the frightening emptiness I had feared. It was concentrated strength. Without constant notifications, my mind stopped being in a perpetual state of semi-alertness, waiting for the next interruption. Without social media on my phone, entire hours of the day opened up where before there had only been fragments of minutes between compulsive checks. Without constantly open email, projects that took days of interrupted work began to be completed in hours of sustained attention. The silence created by systematic subtraction wasn't absence. It was concentrated presence. It was the restored capacity to delve deep. It was the return of something I had lost without realizing it. My natural ability to focus intensely when the environment wasn't constantly sabotaging that capacity. Fujita was right. Focus didn't need to be built through heroic effort. It needed to be revealed through the deliberate removal of everything that suffocated it. Fujita applied this principle not only to managing external distractions, but to radically simplifying his entire life. He had only a few essential tools in his studio, kept impeccably clean and organized. He had a simple daily routine that rarely varied because variation required decisions, and decisions consumed mental energy that he preferred to preserve for his work. He ate the same simple meals, wore the same practical clothes, and maintained a small social circle of people who respected his work instead of demanding his social energy. Everything in his life was deliberately subtracted until it reached pure essence, and from this essence emerged such deep focus that he could work for 8 hours straight on a single piece of pottery without ever feeling that he was straining himself. His focus did not come from superhuman discipline. It came from systematically removing everything that did not serve his essential purpose, creating a life so simple, so focused, so free of unnecessary friction, that deep focus was the path of least resistance. And I began to apply this principle radically. Everything in my life had to justify its existence. If it did not directly serve my essential goals or my fundamental well-being, it was a candidate for removal. And the more I subtracted, the more my natural focus emerged from the silence I created. The practice of single action, doing less to do better. I deluded myself into believing that multitasking was power. For years, I had treated my ability to do multiple things simultaneously as a superpower, as evidence of superior competence, as a valuable skill that set me apart. I answered emails while in meetings. I edited documents while on calls. I ate while working. I listened to podcasts while doing housework. I planned my next project while still in the middle of the current one. There was pride in this ability to keep multiple balls in the air, to never be doing just one thing, to maximize every minute by doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. I thought it made me more productive, more efficient, more capable. Modern corporate culture reinforced this belief. Multitasking was listed as a desirable skill in job descriptions. People who could use their time well by multitasking were praised, and having only one tab open on your computer seemed almost suspicious, as if you weren't being productive enough. But neuroscience and the experience of masters like Fujita told a completely different story. Multitasking is an illusion and a destructive one. What I called multitasking was actually rapid task switching. My brain wasn't processing 2 things simultaneously. It was rapidly switching between them, and each switch had an enormous cognitive cost that I didn't realize. Studies showed that it takes only a fraction of a second to recalibrate focus every time you change tasks, and these fractions accumulated throughout the day added up to hours of wasted cognitive capacity. But beyond the scientific data, there was experiential truth that I had been denying. When I did multiple things at the same time, none of them received my full capacity. All were executed in a diminished version, processed by a fraction of me instead of my whole being. Quality suffered. Depth suffered. And something more subtle but crucial also suffered: my ability to be truly present in anything. But I realized that every time I divided my attention, I also divided my soul. This realization came at a moment of devastating clarity. I was trying to have an important conversation with someone I loved while simultaneously checking emails on my laptop. I answered a question she asked, but when she questioned my answer, I realized I hadn't really heard the question. I was physically present, but psychologically absent. My attention divided between her and the screen. And the result was that I wasn't really present with either. I wasn't giving my best to the emails, and certainly wasn't giving genuine presence to the person in front of me. And at that moment I realized, this was how I had been living my whole life now. Divided, fragmented, never fully present anywhere. My soul, my essence, my capacity for total presence, my depth of engagement, was being divided into smaller and smaller pieces, distributed among ever more numerous demands, until there was nothing whole left of me for anything. Fujita had a practice he called single action, or ichigyo in Japanese, doing one thing at a time with complete attention, as if it were the only thing that existed in the universe at that moment. When he worked on a piece of pottery, there was no background music, no conversations, no thoughts about other projects, or worries about the future, or ruminations about the past. There was only his hands, the clay, and the present moment. When he ate, he simply ate. He didn't read, he didn't watch anything, he didn't plan. He simply savored each bite with complete attention. When he talked to someone, that person received the totality of his presence, not a divided version competing with a cell phone or thoughts about other things. This single action practice wasn't about doing less overall. It was about doing each thing completely instead of doing many things in fractions. And paradoxically, doing fewer things simultaneously resulted in doing more things better over time. I began to systematically implement ichigyo in my life, and the results were immediate and profound. When working on a project, I would close absolutely everything else. Only one document open, no other tabs, phone on airplane mode, door closed. And I would completely immerse myself in defined blocks of time. A task that previously took 3 hours of interrupted and divided work now took 45 minutes of total attention, and the quality was incomparably superior. When I was in a meeting or conversation, I would completely put away all devices and give my full attention. And not only did productivity improve, but the quality of human connection was transformed. People felt the difference between receiving a fraction of my attention versus all of it. When I ate, I simply ate, and I rediscovered pleasure and satisfaction in food that I had forgotten existed when I ate distractedly while scrolling through screens. Each single action, each moment of wholeness, each choice to do one thing completely instead of 3 things partially, was an act of reassembling my fragmented soul, of becoming whole again. And I discovered that being whole in one thing was infinitely more powerful than being divided among 10. Fujita was right. Doing less simultaneously meant doing better overall. And doing better overall meant finally doing something that truly mattered, something that truly had an impact, something that truly expressed my full potential instead of just scattered fractions of it. The Japanese ritual of preparation, focus, begins before action. I learned that focus isn't born at the moment of the task, but in the ritual before it. This was one of the most counterintuitive and transformative lessons I received from Fujita's teachings. I had always treated preparation as a necessary inconvenience, an obstacle between me and the real work, time I tried to minimize to get straight to what matters. I would sit at my desk with my mind still racing from the previous activity, a chaotic environment around me without any transition, and I expected focus to simply appear through sheer willpower. Then I would get frustrated when I couldn't concentrate immediately, when my mind wandered, when it took me 20 or 30 minutes to finally enter a state of deep focus. I thought this was my fault, a weakness of discipline. But Fujita taught me something radically different. Focus is a state that needs to be intentionally cultivated through ritual preparation, not something you simply switch on like a light switch. Preparation wasn't a waste of time. It was an essential investment that determined the quality of everything that would come after. Fujita had an elaborate ritual before beginning any work in his studio. First, he would thoroughly clean his workspace, even if it was already clean, because the physical act of cleaning also cleansed his mind. Then, he would meticulously organize his tools, each in its exact place, creating an external order that mirrored the internal order he was cultivating. He would then sit in silence for a few minutes, simply breathing, allowing the frenetic energy of the rest of the day to dissipate before touching the clay. He would light a specific incense that he used only when working, creating an olfactory association that signaled to his brain, "Now we enter deep creation mode." Finally, he would touch the clay for the first time, with total intention, as if greeting an old friend. This entire ritual took perhaps 15 minutes, but those 15 minutes of preparation allowed for 6 or 8 hours of effortless, focused work. He wasn't wasting time. He was investing in creating conditions where focus was inevitable rather than forced. When I prepared the environment, my mind automatically aligned. I started creating my own preparation rituals before work that required deep focus, and the difference was dramatic. Before a writing session, I would completely clear my desk, leaving nothing except my notebook or computer and maybe a cup of tea. The physical act of removing external clutter created internal mental space. I would completely turn off my cell phone, not just silence it, removing the temptation from its existence. I would close the door, open a window for fresh air, light a specific candle that I only used when writing, creating a sensory anchor that my brain began to associate with a state of focus. I would sit for 2 minutes in silence, just breathing, letting the worries and thoughts of the rest of the day settle like sediment settling at the bottom of a turbulent lake. And only then, when the environment was prepared and my mind was quiet, would I begin. The difference was night and day compared to my previous method of simply sitting and trying to force focus through brute willpower. With ritual preparation, I entered a state of deep concentration in minutes instead of half an hour. Work flowed easily instead of being a constant struggle against distraction. And more importantly, the quality was radically superior. Work done in a state of cultivated focus through proper preparation was incomparably better than forced work through rigid discipline without preparation. Fujita understood something fundamental about the nature of the human mind. It cannot be commanded, only invited. You cannot order your mind to focus, but you can create conditions so conducive to focus that the mind naturally settles into it like a bird landing on a branch specifically prepared to receive it. The principle extended beyond physical environmental preparation. There was also temporal preparation, not trying to do deep work immediately after a stressful meeting or difficult conversation, but giving myself a transition buffer. There was energetic preparation, not attempting creative work when exhausted, but respecting natural energy rhythms throughout the day. There was nutritional preparation, not attempting deep concentration on an empty stomach or after a heavy meal that diverted blood from the brain. Each element of preparation seemed small individually, but collectively they created conditions where focus was not a constant battle, but a natural state that emerged spontaneously. Japanese masters of various arts, tea ceremony, calligraphy, flower arranging, martial arts, all emphasized ritual preparation because they understood a truth that modern culture had forgotten in the rush to get straight to the point. The ritual of preparation is not separate from the work, it is an integral part of it. How you prepare determines how you execute. And when preparation is done carefully, intentionally, even reverently, the work that follows carries that same quality. I stopped seeing preparation as an inconvenience and began to see it for what it truly was, the foundation upon which all meaningful work is built. And when I finally honored the preparation, with the time and attention it deserved, my focus transformed from something I had to force into something that emerged naturally, almost effortlessly, simply because I had created all the conditions for it to flourish. The invisible cut, eliminating what steals energy, not just time. I removed obvious distractions, but left small emotional outlets intact. When I began my journey of building true focus, I did what most people do. I eliminated visible and obvious distractions. I deleted social media, turned off notifications, cleared my physical space, and created focused work schedules. And these changes undoubtedly helped. But there was something that continued to drain me, something more subtle and insidious that I wasn't identifying. I still ended my days mentally exhausted, even when I hadn't done that much work. I still felt my energy being sucked away by invisible sources that I couldn't name. I still had periods where my focus simply wasn't available, no matter how perfectly I prepared my external environment. It was only when I delved deeper into Fujita's teachings that I understood the most destructive distractions aren't the ones that steal your time. They're the ones that steal your energy. And often these are invisible, tolerated for so long that you no longer even notice the constant drain they cause. Fujita spoke about energy leaks. Energy leaks that happen at such subtle levels that they go unnoticed until you start paying attention. A relationship that constantly drains you but that you maintain out of guilt or obligation. A recurring conversation that always ends with you feeling worse, but that you keep having. An appointment you hate but never cancel because you should do it. An unresolved issue that your brain keeps processing in the background, consuming mental cycles. A person who regularly oversteps your boundaries, but you never confront them. Each of these things may only consume minutes of your time, but consumes hours of your energy, mental energy processing the situation, emotional energy dealing with unresolved feelings, psychological energy maintaining unestablished boundaries. And this drained energy is energy that is not available for deep focus, for creative work, for genuine presence. Fujita taught that focus is lost by what you tolerate, not by what you avoid. This distinction was revolutionary for me. I was getting good at avoiding obvious distractions, not checking my phone during work, not watching TV while eating, not accepting unnecessary meetings. But I was tolerating dozens of situations that continually drained my energy, saying yes when I wanted to say no, maintaining toxic relationships for fear of confrontation, carrying unexpressed resentments, postponing necessary difficult conversations, maintaining commitments that no longer served my goals, tolerating behaviors from others that exceeded my limits. Each thing I tolerated against my inner truth created internal friction, psychological tension that consumed energy in constant background. Like having dozens of applications running in the background on your computer. You don't actively see them, but they are consuming memory and processing power, slowing everything down. I started systematically taking inventory of all the small energy drains in my life, and the list was frighteningly long. A friend who always complained but never took action and left me exhausted after every conversation. Energy drain. A project I'd agreed to do, but my heart wasn't in, so every hour working on it was torture. Energy drain. An email that hadn't been answered for weeks and generated guilt every time I checked my inbox. Energy drain. An unresolved argument with a family member that my mind kept replaying. Energy drain. A disorganized work environment that created constant visual stress. Energy drain. A recurring social commitment that I dreaded every week but never canceled. Energy drain. Each item individually seemed too small to warrant attention, but collectively they were bleeding my ability to focus deeply because they were draining my vital energy. And I started making cuts, this time not of the obvious distractions, but of the invisible drains. I had an honest conversation with a friend about a dynamic that wasn't working. Difficult, but liberating. I gave up on a project I was doing out of obligation, not alignment. Scary, but energizing. I finally answered those emails, or made the decision to delete them and move on. Immediate mental relief. I initiated a difficult conversation I had been postponing for months. Uncomfortable, but decisive. I established clear boundaries where before there was only silent tolerance and growing resentment. Vulnerable, but empowering. Each of these cuts was harder than simply deleting an app from my phone because it involved confrontation, vulnerability, social risk. but the return in recovered energy was exponentially greater. When I cut things that were draining my energy, I not only recovered time, I recovered vitality, enthusiasm, and the capacity for presence that had been divided among 1,000 low-level worries. Fujita was absolutely right. What you tolerate kills your focus more effectively than any obvious distraction. And when I finally had the courage to stop tolerating, when I set firm boundaries around my energy just as I had set them around my time, my focus deepened in ways I hadn't thought possible. Because now I had not only protected time, but energy available to fill that time with total presence. And that combination, protected time plus preserved energy, was the formula for the kind of focus that creates truly exceptional work. The Japanese state of flow, when action becomes silent. One day, working in total silence, I entered the state that Taka Fujita called the continuous line. I had worked for 3 hours without a break, completely absorbed in what I was creating, and when I finally looked up, it was like waking from a deep dream. There was no sense of effort or struggle. There was no awareness of time passing. There was no inner voice narrating or judging or planning. There was only pure action, flowing through me like a river through its bed, without obstacle, without friction, without separation between who was doing and what was being done. Fujita called this the continuous line, a state where your work becomes an uninterrupted line of attention, without breaks, without fragmentation, without hesitation. In Japan, master craftsmen called it mushin, or mindless mind, a paradox where you are more present and focused than ever, but self-conscious awareness disappears completely. Westerners would call it a flow state, but the Japanese understanding had deeper nuances. The first time I experienced true continuous line work was accidental. I had implemented all the practices Fujita taught without expecting a specific result, and then it simply happened. Perfect preparation ritual. Environment completely free of distractions. Energy preserved through cutting off invisible leaks. Single action, doing only one thing with totality. And then, at some imperceptible moment, I crossed the threshold. The separation between I and work dissolved. There was no longer any conscious effort to maintain focus. Focus had become as natural as breathing. Hands moved with their own wisdom. Words flowed without needing to seek or force. Decisions happened instantly, without conscious deliberation. I was completely present, but without the heavy consciousness of being present. It was as if I had stepped out of the way and allowed something greater to work through me. And the quality of what emerged from this state was radically superior to anything I produced through conventional effort. Fujita described the continuous line as a state where you are no longer doing work, you are the work. The subject-object separation collapses. There is no I sculpting the clay. There is only sculpting happening. There is no I writing. There is only writing flowing. This dissolution of ego is not a loss of ability or control. It is a transcendence of the kind of control that actually interferes with excellence. When the self-conscious part of the mind gets out of the way, skills and knowledge accumulated through years of practice can finally express themselves without the hindrance of analytical thought. This is why elite athletes talk about their best performances happening automatically. Artists talk about creations that came through them. Writers talk about stories that wrote themselves. It is not empty mysticism. It is an accurate description of a state where ego ceases to interfere and accumulated mastery can finally express itself fully. That's when I understood. Focus is when the world disappears and you finally appear. This revelation came during one of those continuous line states. For years, I had thought that focus was about intensity of concentration, about the strength to maintain attention despite distractions. But I was completely wrong. True focus is not intense effort. It's deep relaxation in total presence. It's not fighting distractions. It's such a complete absence of distractions that the struggle becomes unnecessary. And the paradoxical result is that when you stop trying so intensely to focus, when you simply create perfect conditions and allow focus to emerge naturally, you enter a state infinitely deeper than anything achievable through brute force. The external world doesn't literally disappear, but it ceases to be relevant. It ceases to have the power to pull you in. And in this absence of a fragmented external world, you, the real you, not the fragmented and distracted version, but the concentrated essence of your capacity and presence, finally appears completely. I learned that a state of continuous line isn't a gift that randomly descends upon a lucky few. It's the predictable result of creating specific conditions, proper ritual preparation, a distraction-free environment, energy preserved by eliminating leaks, single action instead of divided action, consistent practice long enough for skills to become ingrained. Each element Fujita taught was a puzzle piece, and when all the pieces aligned, continuous line was a natural consequence. It didn't happen every time. Some sessions were just ordinary work, and that was okay. But it happened often enough that it completely transformed the nature of my work and my life. Because in a state of continuous line, I wasn't just more productive, I was more alive, more present, more fully expressing my potential than at any other time. And pursuing this state, creating conditions for it to flourish regularly, became not just a productivity strategy, but a spiritual practice, a path to becoming who I was capable of being when all noise was silenced and only essence remained. If you recognize that you've been living in fragmentation instead of focus, you don't have to stay stuck in it. Sign up for the Geisha Path. Upcoming videos will show you specific practices to enter a continuous line state more frequently. Leave a comment. Have you ever experienced that state where the world disappears and you finally reappear? True focus isn't about effort. It's about alignment.